What's up gamers, Dreamcastguy here, reviewing today Anthem. This has been one of my most highly anticipated games of the entire year, mostly because I am such a freaking Bioware fanboy. Everything the studio puts out, from Dragon Age to Mass Effect, is very, very miraculous. But this game, in my opinion, is a giant step in the wrong direction. Anthem is an always online RPG that, instead of having a great story, seems to center itself on being a looter shooter, something where you're just trying to level up, get new guns, and explore some very mysterious areas over and over again. And so for that reason, I do have to warn you of something right up front, which is that since this is always connected to the internet, it's going to constantly grow and change. I actually waited to release this video until after I tested the day 1 patch, just to see if it could fix any of the giant problems with it. But even still, some of this information might become outdated in the coming weeks or in a month. But as it stands now, Anthem is a very, very messy game. It's something that manages to be fun, but is extremely flawed. Let's begin with the story itself. Anthem takes place on a far-off planet where the gods have left. There used to be these mysterious creatures that were here that everything they touched could be created. They could form buildings, life, they could do anything they wanted. But when they disappeared, they left behind their ability to make things, which is called the Anthem of Creation, which now everybody wants to try and harness to try and terraform the world or to keep themselves safe. Now this in itself would be very, very cool, but unfortunately, this plotline isn't exactly spelled out. There are a couple cutscenes here and there, but for the most part, this game is primarily told through logs, just trying to dig through menus and reading different codexes. And funny enough, if you actually take the time to read these codexes, there will end up being plot holes. Yes, I'm being completely serious. There are errors in this writing if you actually do the research. Like, one of the main people you fight are these really cool aliens in red. They're called the Scars, and I was curious what they were, so I decided to really dig through the files and figure out what they're supposed to be. And it turns out that they're basically millions of little insects that have somehow managed to create these big bodies. They actually work together to carry guns and wear clothes, which is very, very bizarre and very, very cool in my opinion. And in the writing themselves, they talk about the fact that they're just ruthless, hungry beings. They don't think, they don't plan. They're just basically creatures that exist to consume and nothing else. But then, later on in the story, they start setting traps and making ambushes and stuff. I mean, how are these things supposed to be mindless animals with machine guns, but simultaneously these super intelligent beings? It doesn't really make sense. And unfortunately, stuff like this kind of carries forward throughout a lot of the stuff. There's a lot of different storyline elements here that frankly don't make any sense. Let's face it though, if you're playing this game, it's probably not for the plot. Instead, it's just because of the raw action. You want to be a superhero out in space. And in that way, I do think that Anthem has some stuff that is very, very good. Let's just take a look at a random mission. This is right here. So every single one of the quests is called a contract, and they basically all play out the same, which is you're dropped into a map, you try and fly to a destination, and then you're trying to collect something or kill something to get paid. Not that complicated, right? Well, so in this one right here, we're supposed to go down into this big giant cavern, and as we go into it, we start realizing that we're going to get stuck. We need to solve these puzzles in order to progress. So basically it ends up being a wave of super powerful enemies that we have to work together to defeat, and then moving deeper into the caverns until eventually we get stuck fighting this super boss. Now all of that is very, very cool. The controls in this game are superb. I mean, every single thing you want to do is instantaneous. This game is based on a very strict time cooldown system, where you basically have a bunch of abilities that can be used every 8 or 9 seconds. You can throw a grenade, do a giant punch, or if you save up enough energy, there's these super ultimates that have like a 60-second cooldown instead. It makes it where you need to try and communicate with your party to do different combos. You can freeze somebody and then shatter them, or electrocute them and then catch them on fire. This is when the game is the absolute best, is when it's just putting you in an area, slamming down some really tough enemies, and saying, hey, figure it out or die trying. The major issues start to arise when it comes to everything around this gameplay. Like, just for example, whenever you beat a quest, you get to go back to town, and when you're there, that's when you see everything you've unlocked. Finishing different contracts will basically give you different loot, new machine guns, a giant shotgun, or maybe a piece of gear that lets you change out one of your special abilities. All of that sounds neat, right? Except for testing this stuff is such an arduous task. Because of all these extremely long load screens, say you go into a mission and realize, oh wait, I want to try and switch something out. I just got a new epic pistol. Let me see how it works. The time it takes to go from a mission back to town to switch something out and back to a mission is 7 minutes. If you just wanted to literally test a new sniper rifle, doing 2 or 3 shots and then switching back to your original loadout, that can take you about 10 solid minutes. Now that is more than just annoying, that is obviously bad programming. That is a design flaw. But I still think that beyond this, I have a really big issue with the fact that the game is quite repetitive. The story itself is not super long. You can actually get to the last boss in just a couple hours. And once you do that, there isn't a lot to really do. I mean, this game is relatively short. Yes, there are some objectives that require you to grind, and there are times where instead of doing a mission, you're just going to the open world to try and find embers to do a giant upgrade, but the game itself, it doesn't really motivate you. It doesn't really do anything that makes it seem like this world is great. Personally, my biggest issue with this game is that there are glitches everywhere. I had so many freaking problems that just completely killed the experience. Even when I managed to have some fun or managed to team up with some friends of mine, I found myself just constantly having the game completely break. I had hard crashes, infinite load screens where I had to force quit or literally turn my console off, and I also had really weird glitches all over the place. Like, this is one that happened to me a lot, which is where I could not be revived. You can see on the screen right now it says hold X to pick yourself up, but pressing the button does nothing. So here I am in a giant boss fight, completely unable to help my teammates simply because the game itself broke. Now beyond this, one of my main issues with the game is the fact that it just seems like it's so short. There's just no real depth that makes it where grinding feels good. As you progress through the game, you are going to get experience points for doing all these different quests, and the experience points give you different unlockables as you go on. It lets you do things like you can actually get extra equipment slots, that way you can have more guns, more customization, more types of armor on your body. And you need these, of course, because you're going to be facing very giant enemies towards the end of the game. But along with this, you also unlock new Javelins. That's the name of your mech suits. So at the beginning, you have a relatively simple one, but as you go on, you get to unlock each of the different ones in whatever order you want. You can get a really small, agile one that's incredibly tough to use, but has deadly blade hands. You can do punch combos and fly away at a moment's notice. Or my personal favorite is the Colossus. This is a heavy mech that is very, very slow, but has so much armoring on it, I could basically stand in the middle of a field getting shot in the head for 10 minutes and be completely fine. The thing here is that these unlockables, after I got them, I didn't really care. I mean, I guess there's a big issue with the fact that this game is relatively easy. There's not really a bunch of stuff in it. You're kind of just doing the quests because they're required. It's not that they're fun, it's not that they're gorgeous, it's just because you have to do them to get to the next big boss. I will say that the only thing in this game that I think is absolutely perfect is actually the Stronghold missions. So these come up periodically and they're basically giant raids. It's where you and 3 other people have to go through a series of stages, deeper and deeper into a territory, and then fight a super ultimate boss. These are great. They're tough, you have to be coordinated, the bosses themselves are very, very unique, and it's when the game really shines, because it seems like they just shove everything else out of the way. It doesn't matter what kind of freaking customization you did, it doesn't matter how many things you managed to craft, it's all about teamwork, communication, and making sure you do not get hit by that next giant blast. I wish that we had more Strongholds. If anything, I actually wish the entire game was Strongholds. If we just got to do a series of really giant boss fights and they just called them this mech boss, I'd be totally fine with it. It's the fact that this game tries to just be so Bioware specific. It tries to be such an evolution of writing and gameplay that it ends up just falling into its own hype. It tries to be so much, it ends up failing so much in the process. And of course, along with this, it is unfortunately an EA game, and Electronic Arts cannot resist putting microtransactions in everything. So you'll notice that there are actually missions around in the environment that let you get lots and lots of gold, which can be used to basically just buy cosmetics. There really isn't any other use for it. You can buy things like happy dances or different skins or different paint jobs, and that stuff is all kind of useless. But you can tell that the really good ones that actually look amazing are the ones that have the biggest price tag on them. They're going to try and monetize this. Over time, they're definitely going to be trying to find every single way they can to just milk the fan base. And my problem is that I don't think there's going to be a fan base. This game is so paper thin, and after I finished the main story, I was so burned out, you could not even tell me to play this game. I'm just so done with it that I don't care. And I feel like that is one of the worst signs of a game. When a game concludes, especially if it's an always online experience, you should be craving more. You should want to just jump right back in and get that next major upgrade. But at this point, my character is so strong and I've done so much, I don't really feel like I need to do anything else. I feel like I've seen everything, I've done everything, and I've killed everything. And at this point, I'm just ready to quit. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Anthem a 6 out of 10. This video was very sad for me to do, simply because I really wish that it was better. Bioware is such a talented team of developers, but it seems like this project may be their very last. Just looking at the really gorgeous art, it's pretty obvious that this was a very expensive project, and I bet it wasn't expansive as they probably hoped. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. I am extremely sick as I record this, so if my voice sounds weird, I do apologize. But yeah, give this video a like. I'm gonna go take a nap. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, you know, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.